Question 1. Quality control measures reveal a critical security vulnerability in a widely used application that requires an immediate patch. The system's maintenance administrator is alerted to the patch's release, but the vendor's documentation is sparse, and internal testing resources are currently unavailable. The organization relies heavily on this application for daily operations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the system's maintenance administrator? Option A. Delay the patch deployment until internal testing resources become available and a comprehensive test plan can be executed. Option B. Consult the vendor for more detailed impact analysis and internal stakeholders for a brief risk assessment before proceeding with any deployment. Option C. Immediately deploy the patch across all production systems to address the critical vulnerability as quickly as possible. Option D. Apply the patch to a small, non-critical segment of the production environment to gauge its impact before a wider rollout. Correct answer is C. Immediately deploy the patch across all production systems to address the critical vulnerability as quickly as possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for system stability and security against the potential disruption caused by a critical software update. The administrator must make a rapid, informed decision that minimizes risk to the organization's operations and data integrity, all while adhering to established maintenance protocols and regulatory requirements. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term system health and compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, risk-based assessment of the patch's impact. This aligns with the principles of robust systems maintenance and updates, specifically security updates and patch management, and system configuration management. By consulting the vendor's release notes, assessing the patch's criticality, and reviewing internal change management policies, the administrator ensures that the decision is data-driven and compliant with established procedures. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing new vulnerabilities or system instability, thereby upholding the organization's duty to maintain secure and reliable systems as mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data protection and operational continuity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the patch immediately without assessment fails to adhere to system configuration management and preventive maintenance procedures. This bypasses critical risk assessment steps, potentially introducing unforeseen issues that could lead to system downtime or security breaches, violating the organization's responsibility to maintain system integrity. Delaying the patch indefinitely due to fear of disruption neglects the security updates and patches requirement. Critical security vulnerabilities, if left unaddressed, expose the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and regulatory penalties, failing the duty of care to protect sensitive information. Applying the patch only to a subset of systems without a clear rollback plan violates system backups and recovery principles and system documentation and version control. This creates an inconsistent system state, making troubleshooting and recovery difficult and potentially leading to data loss or system failure across the entire environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment and adherence to established protocols. This involves 1. Understanding the criticality of the issue, e.g., security vulnerability, performance bug. 2. Consulting official documentation and vendor advisories. 3. Evaluating the potential impact of the update on existing systems and operations. 4. Following internal change management procedures, including testing and rollback planning. 5. Documenting all decisions and actions. This structured approach ensures that maintenance activities are performed in a controlled, compliant, and risk-mitigated manner. Question 2. Examination of the data shows that a critical update for the firm's core portfolio management system, PMS, software has been released, promising enhanced security features and improved performance. The IT department is under pressure to deploy this update rapidly to mitigate potential emerging cyber threats. Simultaneously, several users have requested customizations to the system's interface to streamline their daily workflows, and a new third-party analytics tool needs to be integrated to provide more granular market insights. Considering the strict regulatory environment for financial institutions in the United States, which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid deployment, user efficiency, and regulatory compliance? Option A. Prioritize user interface customization, request to improve immediate workflow efficiency, defer the PMS software update until a less busy period, and integrate the third-party analytics tool without extensive vendor vetting to meet immediate business needs. Option B. Deploy the PMS software update directly to a subset of users for initial feedback. Allow users to make their own interface customizations and proceed with the third-party integration while initiating a separate, long-term compliance review. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and impact analysis of the PMS software update. Test it rigorously in a staging environment. Implement granular user access controls for interface customization, and perform a comprehensive security and compliance review of the third-party analytics tool and its integration plan before deployment. Option D. Immediately deploy the PMS software update to all production servers after a brief review of the release notes. Grant administrative privileges to key users for interface customization, and proceed with the integration of the third-party analytics tool, assuming its vendor has standard security protocols. The correct answer is D. Immediately deploy the PMS software update to all production servers after a brief review of the release notes. Grant administrative privileges to key users for interface customization, and proceed with the integration of the third-party analytics tool, assuming its vendor has standard security protocols. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of PMS software in managing sensitive financial data and operations. Administrators must balance efficiency with robust security and compliance. The challenge lies in ensuring that any modification, whether an update, customization, or integration, adheres strictly to the established regulatory framework for financial institutions, which in this context is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations governing financial data security and privacy. Failure to do so can result in severe penalties, data breaches, and loss of client trust. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented process that prioritizes security and compliance throughout the software lifecycle. This includes thorough testing of updates and patches in a staging environment before deployment, rigorous access control management for user accounts, and careful configuration of system settings to meet regulatory requirements for data integrity and auditability. Specifically, the correct approach would involve a phased rollout of the update, including pre-deployment testing, user acceptance testing, and post-deployment monitoring, all within a documented change management framework that aligns with regulatory mandates like those from the SEC or FINRA regarding system integrity and cybersecurity. An incorrect approach that bypasses testing and documentation for expediency would be professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes regulatory requirements for change management and risk mitigation. For instance, deploying an update without proper testing could introduce vulnerabilities or disrupt critical functions, leading to potential data breaches or operational failures, which are explicitly prohibited and penalized under regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, or the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, if they impact financial reporting. Another incorrect approach, such as granting broad administrative privileges to all users to simplify interface customization, creates significant security risks. This violates the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of cybersecurity mandated by various U.S. financial regulations. Such broad access increases the attack surface, making the system vulnerable to unauthorized modifications, data theft, or accidental system misconfigurations, all of which are serious compliance failures. Finally, integrating third-party systems without a thorough security assessment and adherence to data sharing agreements would also be an incorrect approach. This can lead to data leakage or non-compliance with data privacy laws like the GLBA, which mandates safeguards for customer financial information. The professional decision-making process for a systems maintenance administrator should involve a risk-based approach. Before any action is taken, the administrator must identify potential risks, assess their impact, and determine mitigation strategies. This process must be guided by the specific regulatory framework applicable to the institution. A robust change management policy, regular security audits, and continuous training on regulatory requirements are essential components of this decision-making process. Prioritizing compliance and security over speed is paramount in the financial services industry. Question 3. Assessment of a proposed server hardware upgrade for a critical database system, where the new hardware offers significantly higher processing power and storage capacity, but requires a different network interface card. NIC, configuration and lacks native support for the organization's current redundant array of independent disks, RAID implementation. The organization's disaster recovery plan mandates specific failover capabilities and data integrity checks, and regulatory guidelines require a minimum system uptime of 99.9%, which approach best ensures compliance and operational resilience. Option A. Implement the new hardware, focusing on achieving the highest possible processing speed and storage, and assume that the existing disaster recovery plan and network security measures will adequately cover the new system's requirements. Option B. Proceed with the upgrade using the new hardware, prioritizing its superior performance and storage, and address any network or RAID compatibility issues as they arise during the implementation phase. Option C. Reject the new hardware due to its incompatibility with the current RAID implementation and the need for NIC reconfiguration, and instead opt for a less powerful but fully compatible hardware solution to avoid potential disruptions. Option D. Implement the new hardware after verifying its compatibility with the organization's existing network infrastructure and ensuring the proposed NIC configuration can be secured. Simultaneously, work with the database administrator and network team to reevaluate and potentially update the disaster recovery plan and RAID implementation to leverage the new hardware's capabilities while meeting regulatory uptime and data integrity requirements. The correct answer is D. Implement the new hardware after verifying its compatibility with the organization's existing network infrastructure and ensuring the proposed NIC configuration can be secured. Simultaneously, work with the database administrator and network team to reevaluate and potentially update the disaster recovery plan and RAID implementation to leverage the new hardware's capabilities while meeting regulatory uptime and data integrity requirements. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term system resilience and regulatory compliance. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, must make a critical decision under pressure, where a hasty or uninformed choice could lead to significant data loss, service disruption, and potential regulatory penalties. The core challenge lies in understanding the implications of different hardware configurations on system performance, security, and disaster recovery capabilities, all within the defined regulatory framework for the SMA exam. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the proposed server hardware against the organization's established disaster recovery and business continuity plans, and crucially, against the specific regulatory requirements governing data integrity and system availability. This includes verifying that the new hardware supports the redundancy and failover mechanisms mandated by regulations, and that its configuration aligns with documented security protocols to prevent unauthorized access or data breaches. The justification for this approach is rooted in the SMA's responsibility to maintain systems that are not only functional but also compliant and resilient, thereby protecting the organization's data and operations as required by law and industry best practices. An incorrect approach of prioritizing immediate cost savings without a comprehensive technical and regulatory review fails to acknowledge the potential long-term financial and reputational damage of inadequate disaster recovery or security. This could lead to noncompliance with regulations that mandate specific uptime or data protection standards, resulting in fines and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the highest performance specifications without considering compatibility with existing infrastructure or the organization's disaster recovery strategy, risks creating a system that is difficult to integrate, maintain, or recover in a crisis. This also overlooks regulatory requirements that might stipulate interoperability or specific recovery time objectives. A third incorrect approach, which involves implementing the new hardware without consulting the organization's documented disaster recovery and business continuity plans, directly violates the principle of proactive risk management and adherence to established procedures, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory bodies to ensure business continuity. The professional reasoning process for an SMA in such a situation should involve: 1. Understanding the immediate request and its potential impact. 2. Consulting all relevant documentation, including system architecture diagrams, security policies, disaster recovery plans, and business continuity plans. 3. Evaluating proposed solutions against these documents and any applicable regulatory mandates. 4. Seeking input from relevant stakeholders, e.g., security team, compliance officer, management, if uncertainties exist. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind the chosen course of action. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the organization's overall objectives and legal obligations. Question 4. Which approach would be most appropriate for a systems maintenance administrator (SMA) when planning essential updates to a critical property management system that handles sensitive client financial and personal data? Option A. Rely on past experience with similar updates and proceed with the maintenance without a formal assessment, assuming no significant problems will occur. Option B. Immediately proceed with the updates to ensure the system remains operational, addressing any issues that arise reactively. Option C. Postpone the updates indefinitely until a perfect, risk-free maintenance window can be identified. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks to system functionality, data integrity, and regulatory compliance before scheduling and executing the updates. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks to system functionality, data integrity, and regulatory compliance before scheduling and executing the updates. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for system functionality with the long-term integrity and security of property management data. A systems maintenance administrator (SMA) must understand that system downtime, even for essential maintenance, can have significant operational and financial repercussions for the property management firm and its clients. Furthermore, the regulatory environment for property management, particularly concerning data privacy and financial record-keeping, necessitates a structured and compliant approach to any system changes. Careful judgment is required to ensure that maintenance activities do not inadvertently compromise sensitive information or violate established protocols. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment. This means systematically evaluating how proposed maintenance will affect system performance, data integrity, user access, and compliance with relevant regulations before any changes are implemented. This proactive evaluation allows for the identification of potential risks and the development of mitigation strategies. Regulatory justification stems from the principle of due diligence and the obligation to maintain systems in a manner that safeguards client data and ensures operational continuity, as often mandated by data protection laws and financial reporting standards. Ethical considerations also dictate that users and clients are informed of potential disruptions and that the maintenance process is conducted with minimal adverse impact. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without a prior impact assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure to assess risks could lead to unforeseen data corruption, security vulnerabilities, or extended downtime if the maintenance introduces new problems. Such an approach would violate the ethical duty to maintain systems responsibly and could contravene regulatory requirements for data security and system integrity. Another incorrect approach, which involves proceeding with maintenance based solely on anecdotal evidence or past experience without a formal assessment, is also flawed. While experience is valuable, it cannot replace a structured analysis of the specific context and potential ramifications of a particular maintenance task. This can lead to overlooking unique risks associated with the current system configuration or recent updates, potentially resulting in non-compliance with current regulations or unexpected system failures. Finally, an approach that delays maintenance indefinitely due to fear of disruption, without any plan for assessment or execution, is also professionally unsound. This inaction can lead to system degradation, increased vulnerability to security threats, and eventual critical failures that are far more disruptive than planned maintenance. It fails to uphold the SMA's responsibility to proactively manage and maintain the systems under their care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, risk-based methodology. This begins with understanding the proposed maintenance task, identifying all stakeholders, and then conducting a comprehensive impact assessment. This assessment should consider technical, operational, security, and regulatory implications. Based on the assessment, a plan should be developed, including rollback procedures, communication strategies, and contingency measures. This ensures that maintenance is performed efficiently, safely, and in compliance with all applicable frameworks. Question 5. Implementation of a new automated system for generating daily operational and guest satisfaction reports has been completed. The system pulls data directly from various operational databases. As the system's maintenance administrator, SMA, you are tasked with ensuring the accuracy and reliability of these reports before they are distributed to management. Critical data feed for guest satisfaction scores has been experiencing intermittent connectivity issues, potentially leading to incomplete or erroneous data being pulled into the reporting system. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure the integrity of the generated reports? Option A. Distribute the raw, unanalyzed data from the operational and guest satisfaction databases to management, allowing them to perform their own analysis and interpretation. Option B. Generate the reports using the available data, and then manually attempt to correct any identified errors in the guest satisfaction scores after the reports have been distributed. Option C. Immediately implement a data validation and reconciliation process for the guest satisfaction data feed before report generation, and flag any discrepancies or missing data in the generated reports. Option D. Proceed with automated report generation as scheduled, assuming the system will handle minor data anomalies and address any reported issues after distribution. Correct answer is C. Immediately implement a data validation and reconciliation process for the guest satisfaction data feed before report generation, and flag any discrepancies or missing data in the generated reports. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the system's maintenance administrator, SMA, to balance the immediate need for operational data with the regulatory imperative to ensure data accuracy and integrity, especially when that data underpins financial and guest satisfaction reporting. The SMA must exercise careful judgment to avoid generating reports that could mislead stakeholders or violate compliance standards. The correct approach involves a systematic validation process before generating and distributing reports. This includes verifying data sources, checking for completeness and consistency, and performing sanity checks on the data itself. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the principles of data integrity and accuracy mandated by regulatory frameworks governing financial and operational reporting. For instance, regulations often require that financial statements and operational metrics be based on reliable and verifiable data. By ensuring data quality upfront, the SMA upholds these standards, preventing potential misinterpretations, incorrect business decisions, and regulatory noncompliance. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of reporting errors that could have significant financial or reputational consequences. Generating reports without verifying the underlying data is an incorrect approach because it directly violates the principle of data integrity. This failure can lead to inaccurate financial reporting, which is a serious regulatory offense in many jurisdictions, potentially resulting in fines and legal repercussions. Furthermore, relying on unverified data for operational reporting can lead to flawed decision-making, impacting guest satisfaction and overall business performance. Automating report generation and distribution without any form of data validation is also an incorrect approach. While automation is efficient, it cannot replace the need for data accuracy. This approach creates a significant risk of propagating errors rapidly and widely, exacerbating the consequences of inaccurate data. It demonstrates a disregard for the quality of information being disseminated, which is a breach of professional responsibility and regulatory expectations for reliable reporting. Presenting raw, unanalyzed data as a report is an incorrect approach because it fails to meet the fundamental purpose of reporting, which is to provide actionable insights. While the data might be technically accurate, its raw form is often overwhelming and difficult to interpret for stakeholders. This can lead to misinterpretations and poor decision-making, undermining the value of the reporting function and potentially violating implicit expectations of providing meaningful analysis, especially in areas like guest satisfaction or revenue analysis, where interpretation is key. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. The SMA should first identify the intended audience and purpose of the report. Then, they should evaluate the criticality of the data to be reported, e.g., financial data versus less critical operational metrics. Based on this assessment, the SMA should implement appropriate data validation and quality assurance steps before report generation and distribution. This includes understanding the relevant regulatory requirements for the specific types of reports being generated and ensuring that the reporting process adheres to those standards. Question 6. System analysis indicates a need to integrate a new online booking engine with the hotel's existing infrastructure, which includes a point-of-sale (POS) system, accounting software, and a guest service platform. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure a secure, reliable, and compliant integration? Option A. Proceed with a direct, full-scale integration of the new booking engine immediately to leverage its features as soon as possible. Option B. Integrate the booking engine using only the vendor's provided default settings, assuming compatibility with all existing hotel systems. Option C. Prioritize the technical integration of the booking engine's core functionalities, deferring any impact analysis on other systems like the payment gateway or telephone system until after initial deployment. Option D. Implement a phased integration strategy involving thorough risk assessment, pilot testing in a controlled environment, and iterative validation before full deployment. The correct answer is D. Implement a phased integration strategy involving thorough risk assessment, pilot testing in a controlled environment, and iterative validation before full deployment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for systems maintenance administrators, SMA, involving the integration of a new online booking engine with existing hotel systems. The professional challenge lies in ensuring seamless data flow, maintaining data integrity, and adhering to regulatory compliance without disrupting current operations or compromising guest data security. The decision-making process requires a thorough understanding of the hotel's existing infrastructure, the technical specifications of the new system, and the relevant regulatory landscape governing data handling and system interoperability. The potential for data conflicts, security vulnerabilities, and operational downtime necessitates a structured and compliant approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased integration strategy that prioritizes thorough testing and validation within a controlled environment before full deployment. This includes conducting a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential data conflicts, security vulnerabilities, and operational impacts. Subsequently, a pilot integration with a limited scope, such as a single property or a subset of booking functionality, should be performed. This pilot phase allows for real-time monitoring, identification of unforeseen issues, and iterative refinement of the integration process. Post-pilot, a full-scale deployment is executed with robust rollback procedures in place. This methodical approach ensures that the integration meets functional requirements, maintains data accuracy across all connected systems, including POS, accounting, and guest service systems, and adheres to data privacy regulations by minimizing exposure during the transition. The emphasis on testing and validation directly supports the principle of maintaining system integrity and operational continuity, which are fundamental responsibilities of an SMA. Incorrect approach is analysis. A direct, full-scale integration without prior testing or risk assessment is an incorrect approach. This bypasses critical validation steps, significantly increasing the risk of widespread data corruption, system outages, and security breaches. Such an approach would likely violate regulatory requirements related to data integrity and system security, as it demonstrates a failure to implement due diligence in system maintenance and integration. Implementing the integration solely based on the vendor's default configuration without internal validation or consideration of existing system interdependencies is also incorrect. This overlooks the unique operational environment and existing integrations, e.g., with the key card system or energy management system, potentially leading to compatibility issues, data mismatches, and operational disruptions. This failure to adapt and validate against the specific environment constitutes a breach of professional responsibility and could lead to regulatory noncompliance if data accuracy or guest privacy is compromised. Focusing exclusively on the technical aspects of the booking engine integration, while neglecting its impact on other critical systems like the payment gateway or telephone system, is another incorrect approach. This siloed perspective fails to recognize the interconnectedness of hotel systems. Such an oversight can lead to cascading failures, where a problem in one integrated system affects others, potentially violating regulations concerning the availability and reliability of critical services. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the existing system architecture and its interdependencies. This should be followed by a comprehensive risk assessment, considering both technical and regulatory implications. A phased integration approach, incorporating pilot testing and validation, is crucial. This iterative process allows for early detection and resolution of issues, ensuring that the integration is robust, secure, and compliant with all applicable regulations. Continuous monitoring and a well-defined rollback plan are essential components of a successful and responsible system integration. Question 7. During the evaluation of a critical system error that has caused intermittent service disruptions, which of the following initial actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practices for a systems maintenance administrator? Option A. Immediately deploy a known patch that has resolved similar issues in the past without further investigation. Option B. Prioritize restoring full user access to the system as quickly as possible, deferring detailed analysis until after service is fully restored. Option C. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to determine the scope of affected users, data, and critical functions before initiating any remediation steps. Option D. Directly engage vendor support for the affected system component, providing them with the error logs and requesting an immediate fix. The correct answer is A. Immediately deploy a known patch that has resolved similar issues in the past without further investigation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a systems maintenance administrator (SMA) to balance immediate system recovery with thorough investigation, all while adhering to strict regulatory frameworks. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise compliance and future system stability. The SMA must exercise careful judgment to avoid making assumptions or implementing temporary fixes that could violate data integrity, security protocols, or reporting requirements mandated by the relevant regulatory body. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic impact assessment that prioritizes understanding the scope and severity of the system error before implementing any corrective actions. This aligns with regulatory requirements for incident management and data protection, which often mandate a clear understanding of affected systems and data before remediation. By first assessing the impact, the SMA ensures that any subsequent actions are proportionate, targeted, and do not inadvertently cause further damage or breaches of compliance. This methodical approach is crucial for accurate root cause analysis and for fulfilling any reporting obligations related to system failures or data compromise. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a quick fix without a full impact assessment fails to meet regulatory obligations for incident response and data integrity. This approach risks exacerbating the problem, potentially leading to data loss or corruption, which could trigger severe penalties under data protection laws. It also bypasses the necessary steps for proper root cause analysis, hindering future prevention efforts and potentially violating audit trail requirements. Focusing solely on restoring user access, without understanding the underlying cause, disregards the need for comprehensive system health and security. This can leave vulnerabilities open, increasing the risk of repeat incidents or more severe security breaches, which are explicitly prohibited by security regulations. It also fails to address potential data integrity issues that might have arisen during the error. Escalating the issue immediately to vendor support without an initial internal impact assessment is inefficient and can lead to unnecessary costs and delays. While vendor support is important, an SMA's primary responsibility is to perform initial diagnostics and understand the internal impact. Premature escalation can also lead to miscommunication and a lack of crucial context for the vendor, potentially delaying resolution and failing to meet internal service level agreements or regulatory timelines for incident resolution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. This typically involves 1. Identification and logging of the incident. 2. Initial assessment of impact and severity. 3. Containment of the issue. 4. Diagnosis and root cause analysis. 5. Resolution and recovery. 6. Post-incident review and documentation. This framework ensures that all regulatory and ethical considerations, such as data protection, security, and reporting, are addressed systematically throughout the incident lifecycle. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a systems maintenance administrator to design and implement a database system that ensures both efficient data retrieval for reporting and robust protection of sensitive customer information. Considering the regulatory framework for financial institutions, Which of the following approaches best balances these requirements while adhering to data protection mandates? Option A. Rely on default database security settings and implement basic password policies for all users, assuming that the network perimeter security is sufficient. Option B. Focus solely on data import and export procedures for reporting, assuming that data integrity will be maintained by the source systems without further validation within the database. Option C. Implement a database structure with granular role-based access controls, encrypt sensitive data at rest and in transit, and conduct regular, independent security audits of access logs and configurations. Option D. Prioritize query performance by disabling most data validation rules and implementing a simplified backup schedule that only captures daily full backups. The correct answer is C. Implement a database structure with granular role-based access controls, encrypt sensitive data at rest and in transit, and conduct regular, independent security audits of access logs and configurations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of database integrity and the potential for significant financial and reputational damage if data is compromised or lost. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, must balance the need for efficient data access and reporting with robust security and recovery measures, all while adhering to regulatory requirements. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate database design and maintenance strategy that minimizes risk and maximizes compliance. The correct approach involves implementing a multi-layered strategy for database security and access control, including role-based access, regular security audits, and encryption of sensitive data. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate the protection of sensitive customer information and the prevention of unauthorized access. For instance, regulations often require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. Regular audits and encryption directly address these requirements by identifying vulnerabilities and protecting data confidentiality. An incorrect approach that relies solely on default database security settings is professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the appropriate technical and organizational measures requirement, leaving the database vulnerable to unauthorized access and data breaches. Such a failure can lead to significant regulatory penalties, loss of customer trust, and financial repercussions. Another incorrect approach that neglects regular data integrity checks and validation rules is also professionally unacceptable. This directly contravenes principles of data accuracy and reliability, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulations governing financial reporting or customer data. Inaccurate data can lead to flawed business decisions, incorrect reporting, and potential legal liabilities. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes performance optimization over security and backup procedures is equally unacceptable. While performance is important, it should not come at the expense of data safety and availability. Regulations often mandate business continuity and disaster recovery plans, which are undermined by inadequate backup and recovery strategies. The potential for data loss or extended downtime due to a failure to implement robust backup and recovery mechanisms represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, considering the sensitivity of the data, potential threats, and regulatory obligations. The SMA should then consult relevant regulatory guidelines and best practices to design and implement a comprehensive database management strategy that addresses security, integrity, availability, and compliance. This involves a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating risks rather than a reactive one. Question 9. Performance analysis shows that a critical server handling customer personal data is experiencing intermittent slowdowns. As the system's maintenance administrator, SMA, you are tasked with optimizing its performance. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data privacy regulations while addressing the performance issue? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the organization's data privacy policy and relevant regulatory requirements. Then assess how proposed performance optimizations might impact data encryption, access controls, and overall data protection before making any changes. Option B. Focus solely on optimizing network traffic and disk I/O, assuming that performance improvements will inherently enhance security and data protection. Option C. Temporarily disable certain security features, such as intrusion detection alerts, to reduce system load and improve performance, with the intention of re-enabling them later. Option D. Immediately implement performance tuning scripts and restart services without reviewing existing data encryption configurations or consulting the organization's data privacy policy. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement performance tuning scripts and restart services without reviewing existing data encryption configurations or consulting the organization's data privacy policy. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the system's maintenance administrator, SMA, to balance operational efficiency with stringent regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The core challenge lies in interpreting and applying the nuances of data privacy regulations to a practical system maintenance task, where a misstep could lead to significant data breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. The SMA must demonstrate a deep understanding of both technical system controls and the legal obligations imposed by data privacy laws. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the organization's data privacy policy, relevant regulatory requirements, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on the exam's specified jurisdiction, and the specific technical controls in place for data encryption and decryption. This approach prioritizes understanding the legal framework and its implications for system configurations before implementing any changes. It ensures that any maintenance or configuration adjustments are performed in a manner that upholds data protection principles, such as data minimization, purpose limitation, and integrity and confidentiality, as mandated by regulations. This proactive, compliance-first methodology is essential for preventing data breaches and avoiding regulatory sanctions. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes without consulting the data privacy policy or regulatory guidelines is a direct violation of compliance requirements. This approach disregards the legal obligations to protect personal data, potentially leading to unauthorized access or disclosure, which are serious breaches of data privacy laws. Performing a superficial check of firewall logs without a comprehensive understanding of the data being processed or the regulatory context risks overlooking critical security vulnerabilities that could expose sensitive data. This approach is insufficient as it does not adequately address the data protection mandates. Focusing solely on system performance metrics without considering the security implications of data handling during maintenance is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This oversight can lead to unintentional data exposure or compromise, violating the confidentiality and integrity principles of data protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, compliance-driven approach. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable data privacy regulations and internal policies. 2. Assessing the potential impact of any system maintenance activity on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of personal data. 3. Consulting with legal and compliance teams when in doubt about regulatory interpretation. 4. Implementing changes only after verifying that they align with both technical best practices and legal requirements. 5. Documenting all maintenance activities and their compliance implications. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical network segment supporting client trading platforms is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues, impacting real-time data feeds. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, has been alerted and needs to restore service urgently. The organization operates under UK financial services regulations. Which of the following troubleshooting and resolution approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional best practices for an SMA? Option A. Temporarily disable intrusion detection systems and access control lists on the affected segment to allow unrestricted traffic flow while investigating. Option B. Isolate the affected network segment. Analyze firewall logs and device configurations for anomalies. Consult the approved network documentation and change management logs, and implement documented, approved remediation steps. Option C. Immediately reboot all network devices within the affected segment and adjacent segments to clear potential temporary glitches. Option D. Search online forums for similar reported issues and apply the most frequently suggested configuration changes to the affected devices. The correct answer is B. Isolate the affected network segment, analyze firewall logs and device configurations for anomalies, Consult the approved network documentation and change management logs, and implement documented, approved remediation steps. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of network availability and security for financial operations. The Systems Maintenance Administrator (SMA) must balance the immediate need to restore service with the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance and data integrity. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security or violate established protocols. Careful judgment is required to ensure that troubleshooting steps do not introduce new vulnerabilities or violate data privacy regulations. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented troubleshooting process that prioritizes security and compliance. This includes isolating the affected segment, analyzing logs for anomalies, and consulting official documentation and approved procedures before making any configuration changes. This methodical approach ensures that any remediation is effective, traceable, and adheres to the principles of least privilege and data protection mandated by financial regulations. Specifically, in the context of UK financial services, adherence to the Financial Conduct Authority (FCA) regulations, such as those concerning operational resilience and IT security, is paramount. The principle of treating customers fairly also implies ensuring reliable service delivery. Documenting all actions taken is crucial for audit trails and incident reporting, as required by regulatory bodies. An incorrect approach of immediately rebooting all network devices without proper diagnosis risks disrupting other critical services and potentially exacerbating the underlying issue if it's configuration related. This bypasses the necessary diagnostic steps and lacks a clear audit trail, failing to meet regulatory requirements for incident management and operational resilience. Another incorrect approach of making ad hoc configuration changes based on anecdotal evidence from online forums, without verifying against approved network designs or security policies, is highly problematic. This introduces significant security risks by potentially misconfiguring devices, opening unintended access points, or violating network segmentation policies designed to protect sensitive data. Such actions would be a direct contravention of FCA guidelines on IT risk management and could lead to data breaches, fines, and reputational damage. A further incorrect approach of disabling security features to temporarily restore connectivity without a clear plan for re-enabling them and without proper authorization is a severe breach of security protocols and regulatory expectations. This directly undermines the integrity of the network and exposes the organization to significant threats, violating the fundamental principles of data protection and cybersecurity expected by regulators. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response plan. This plan should guide the SMA through stages of identification, containment, eradication, and recovery. It should emphasize the importance of documentation at every step, adherence to change control procedures, and escalation to senior management or security teams when necessary. The SMA must always consider the regulatory landscape and the potential impact of their actions on data security, customer service, and business continuity. Prioritizing a thorough understanding of the problem before implementing solutions, even under pressure, is key to maintaining professional integrity and regulatory compliance. Question 11. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the onboarding time for external contractors, leading to delays in project deployment. A new contractor requires immediate access to several critical systems to begin their assigned tasks. As the Systems Maintenance Administrator, you are aware that the standard procedure involves a multi-step approval process for role assignment, which can take up to 48 hours. The project manager is pressuring you to grant the contractor full administrative access immediately to expedite their work, stating that the contractor is highly trusted and the project timeline is critical. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Create a user account for the contractor and assign them a predefined role that grants only the minimum necessary permissions to perform their immediate tasks, while initiating the standard approval process for any additional access requirements. Option B. Instruct the contractor to use the credentials of an existing senior administrator to access the systems, as this will allow them to begin work without delay. Option C. Grant the contractor full administrative privileges to all systems immediately, as requested by the project manager, to ensure project timelines are met. Option D. Create a generic contractor user account with broad access permissions that can be shared by all external contractors to streamline the onboarding process. The correct answer is A. Create a user account for the contractor and assign them a predefined role that grants only the minimum necessary permissions to perform their immediate tasks, while initiating the standard approval process for any additional access requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and robust security protocols, particularly concerning user access management. The Systems Maintenance Administrator (SMA) is tasked with balancing the immediate need for system access for a new contractor with the long-term security implications of granting potentially excessive privileges. This requires careful judgment to avoid both security breaches and operational bottlenecks. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to established role-based access control (RBAC) policies and the principle of least privilege. This means creating a user account for the contractor and assigning them a role that grants only the minimum permissions necessary to perform their defined duties. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate strong access controls to protect sensitive data and system integrity. For instance, in a U.S. context, regulations like HIPAA for healthcare or SOX for financial reporting implicitly or explicitly require granular access controls to prevent unauthorized access and ensure accountability. Ethically, this approach upholds the responsibility to protect the organization's assets and data from potential misuse or compromise. An incorrect approach would be to grant the contractor administrative privileges immediately, citing the need for rapid onboarding and potential future tasks. This fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of modern security best practices and often a requirement for compliance with various data protection regulations. Granting broad administrative access increases the attack surface and the potential for accidental or malicious damage to the system. It also makes auditing user activity significantly more difficult, as distinguishing legitimate administrative actions from unauthorized ones becomes challenging. Another incorrect approach would be to delay the creation of a user account altogether, instructing the contractor to share an existing administrator's credentials. This is a severe security and compliance failure. Sharing credentials violates fundamental security principles and makes accountability impossible, as it becomes unclear who performed specific actions. Many regulatory frameworks explicitly prohibit credential sharing and mandate unique user identification for auditing purposes. This practice also bypasses the established RBAC framework, undermining the entire access control system. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to create a generic contractor account with broad permissions that are not tied to specific roles or individuals. While seemingly efficient, this approach also fails to implement effective RBAC and the principle of least privilege. It lacks individual accountability and makes it difficult to revoke access for a specific individual when their contract ends. This can lead to orphan accounts with excessive privileges, posing a significant security risk and failing to meet compliance requirements for user activity monitoring and auditing. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific requirements of the role and the tasks the user will perform. 2. Consulting the organization's established RBAC policy and security guidelines. 3. Identifying or creating a role that precisely matches the required permissions, adhering to the principle of least privilege. 4. Creating the user account with the assigned role and ensuring all necessary security configurations, e.g., strong password policies, are applied. 5. Documenting the access granted and the justification for it. 6. Regularly reviewing user access privileges to ensure they remain appropriate. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates that the legacy customer database contains critical client financial information that must be migrated to a new, cloud-based CRM system within the next quarter. The new system has a different data schema and requires data to be formatted according to specific industry standards for reporting. The Systems Maintenance Administrator is tasked with overseeing this migration. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with regulatory requirements and data integrity during this migration? Option A. Focus solely on migrating the essential client contact information and defer the migration of historical financial transaction data to a subsequent phase to reduce the complexity and timeline of the initial migration. Option B. Develop a detailed data migration plan that includes thorough data profiling, comprehensive data mapping, transformation rules aligned with regulatory reporting standards, rigorous validation checks at each migration phase, and extensive user acceptance testing before final cutover. Option C. Execute a bulk data export, and then rely on the new CRM system's built-in data import tools to handle the transformation and validation, assuming they are designed to meet industry standards. Option D. Prioritize a rapid data extraction and direct import into the new system, followed by a post-migration cleanup of any identified data discrepancies, focusing on meeting the aggressive deadline. The correct answer is D. Prioritize a rapid data extraction and direct import into the new system, followed by a post-migration cleanup of any identified data discrepancies, focusing on meeting the aggressive deadline. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for system functionality with the long-term integrity and compliance of the data. A systems maintenance administrator, SMA, must ensure that data migration, a critical process, is not only technically sound, but also adheres to the stringent regulatory framework governing financial data. The pressure to meet deadlines can tempt shortcuts, but these can lead to significant compliance breaches and operational risks. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, phased data migration strategy that prioritizes data validation and testing against the specified regulatory framework. This includes meticulous data mapping, transformation rules that align with regulatory requirements, and robust validation checks at each stage. The justification lies in the absolute priority of regulatory compliance. For instance, if the jurisdiction mandates specific data retention periods or data anonymization for certain types of information, the migration process must inherently support these requirements. Thorough testing and verification ensure that the transformed data accurately reflects the source while meeting all legal and ethical obligations, thereby preventing data integrity issues and potential regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach that bypasses thorough data validation and testing in favor of speed would be professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the principle of data integrity and compliance, which are paramount in regulated environments. Such an approach risks introducing errors, inconsistencies, or non-compliant data into the new system, leading to potential breaches of data protection laws, financial reporting inaccuracies, and severe reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that neglects detailed data mapping and transformation logic, assuming a direct transfer of data, is also flawed. This overlooks the possibility that data formats, definitions, or regulatory requirements may differ between the source and target systems. Without precise mapping and transformation, critical data elements could be misinterpreted, lost, or rendered non-compliant, leading to audit failures and regulatory sanctions. Finally, an approach that inadequately documents the migration process, including the rationale behind transformation rules and validation outcomes, is professionally deficient. Proper documentation is essential for audit trails, troubleshooting, and future system maintenance. A lack of documentation hinders accountability and makes it difficult to demonstrate compliance to regulators, increasing the risk of penalties. The professional decision-making process for SMAs in such situations should involve a risk-based approach. Prioritize understanding the regulatory landscape thoroughly. Develop a detailed migration plan that explicitly addresses compliance requirements. Implement rigorous testing and validation protocols at every step. Maintain comprehensive documentation. When faced with time pressures, escalate concerns about potential compliance risks to management rather than compromising on regulatory adherence. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that the marketing department requires a highly customized dashboard for campaign performance tracking, including real-time data visualization and automated report generation based on specific lead scoring criteria. They have also requested a simplified user interface for their team and the ability to integrate with a third-party social media analytics tool. As the system's maintenance administrator, what is the most appropriate course of action to address these requests while adhering strictly to the regulatory framework governing the system? Option A. Prioritize the integration of the third-party social media analytics tool as it is a direct request for external data, and then address the dashboard and interface modifications if time permits. Option B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment of each requested customization, evaluating its technical feasibility, security implications, data integrity risks, and strict adherence to all relevant regulatory guidelines and system architecture before proposing any implementation. Option C. Immediately proceed with developing the custom dashboard, simplified interface, and integrating the third-party tool, as these are direct requests from a key department aimed at improving efficiency. Option D. Inform the marketing department that their requests are beyond the scope of standard system capabilities and cannot be accommodated due to potential system instability. The correct answer is C. Immediately proceed with developing the custom dashboard, simplified interface, and integrating the third-party tool, as these are direct requests from a key department aimed at improving efficiency. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for systems maintenance administrators, SMA, where a department's specific operational needs clash with the standard system configuration. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for enhanced functionality and user experience with the imperative to maintain system integrity, security, and compliance with regulatory frameworks. The SMA must navigate stakeholder expectations, technical feasibility, and adherence to established guidelines without compromising the overall stability or security of the system. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the requested customizations against the established regulatory framework and system architecture. This includes understanding the specific requirements for custom report creation, interface design, workflow automation, scripting, API integration, module configuration, system settings, UI, data mapping, and branding. The SMA must then evaluate the potential impact of these customizations on system performance, security vulnerabilities, data integrity, and compliance with relevant regulations. This involves consulting documentation, potentially engaging with the vendor, and performing rigorous testing in a non-production environment. The ultimate goal is to implement changes that meet the stakeholders' needs while remaining within the defined regulatory boundaries and maintaining system stability. This aligns with the SMA's responsibility to ensure the system operates efficiently, securely, and in accordance with all applicable laws and guidelines. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing customizations without a comprehensive impact assessment and adherence to the regulatory framework is a significant failure. This could lead to security breaches, data corruption, or non-compliance with reporting or data handling regulations. For instance, creating custom reports without verifying data sources and transformation logic could result in inaccurate reporting, which has regulatory implications. Designing custom interfaces without considering accessibility standards or user authentication protocols could create usability issues or security risks. Automating workflows without proper validation and error handling can lead to unintended consequences and data inconsistencies. Custom scripting without rigorous review and testing can introduce vulnerabilities or break existing functionalities. API integrations without proper security measures and data validation can expose sensitive information. Modifying system settings or user interfaces without understanding their broader impact can disrupt system operations or create compliance gaps. Data mapping and transformation without adherence to data governance policies can lead to data integrity issues. System branding changes that obscure critical information or violate data presentation regulations are also problematic. Professional reasoning. When faced with stakeholder requests for system customization, SMAs should follow a structured decision-making process. This process begins with a clear understanding of the request and its business justification. Next, the SMA must thoroughly research the technical feasibility and potential impact of the proposed changes, always referencing the specific regulatory framework governing the system. This includes identifying any potential conflicts with existing policies, security protocols, or data handling requirements. If the proposed changes are feasible and compliant, the SMA should develop a detailed implementation plan, including testing and rollback procedures. If the changes are not compliant or pose significant risks, the SMA must clearly communicate these concerns to the stakeholders, explaining the regulatory or technical reasons for the refusal, and where possible, proposing compliant alternatives. This proactive and informed approach ensures that system maintenance aligns with both operational needs and regulatory obligations. Question 14. Process analysis reveals that a critical production server has experienced a hardware failure during peak operational hours, impacting essential business services. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, is tasked with resolving the issue promptly while adhering to organizational policies and regulatory requirements. Which of the following actions best represents the professional and compliant approach to this situation? Option A. Procure the fastest available replacement server from an external vendor to minimize downtime, bypassing standard procurement and inventory update procedures to expedite service restoration. Option B. Immediately replace the faulty server with an identical, pre-approved spare from the secure storage, ensuring it is properly configured and tested according to documented procedures before bringing it online, and updating the hardware inventory and asset management systems post-replacement. Option C. Attempt a rapid, on-site repair of the existing server using available spare parts, without fully documenting the diagnostic steps or the repair process, to quickly restore functionality. Option D. Temporarily reallocate resources from non-critical systems to support the affected services, while awaiting a detailed, long-term analysis of the hardware failure before any replacement is considered. The correct answer is B. Immediately replace the faulty server with an identical, pre-approved spare from the secure storage, ensuring it is properly configured and tested according to documented procedures before bringing it online, and updating the hardware inventory and asset management systems post-replacement. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for systems maintenance administrators, SMA, involving a critical hardware failure during a period of high system demand. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for system uptime with the long-term implications of hardware maintenance, regulatory compliance, and data integrity. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that violate established procedures and potentially compromise security or data. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both expedient and compliant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established hardware replacement procedures, which includes proper documentation, testing, and inventory management. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate accurate record-keeping for IT assets, ensuring accountability and facilitating future audits. Following documented procedures also minimizes the risk of introducing new issues during the replacement process and ensures that the replacement hardware meets all security and performance specifications. This methodical approach upholds the principle of due diligence in system maintenance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately replacing the faulty server with a spare without following the documented inventory update and asset tagging procedures. This failure violates regulations requiring accurate hardware inventory management, making it difficult to track assets, manage licenses, and perform future audits. It also bypasses essential security checks that might be part of the standard replacement process. Another incorrect approach is to attempt a quick, undocumented repair of the faulty server to restore service, bypassing the formal hardware replacement procedure and diagnostic protocols. This is problematic because it risks further damage, data corruption, or incomplete resolution, potentially leading to recurring issues. It also fails to adhere to hardware diagnostics and troubleshooting guidelines, which are crucial for identifying root causes and preventing future failures. Furthermore, it bypasses the requirement for proper hardware replacement procedures, which often include testing and validation to ensure the system is fully functional and secure. A third incorrect approach involves sourcing a replacement server from an unapproved vendor or using a component that does not meet the organization's established specifications without proper vetting or documentation. This can introduce security vulnerabilities, compatibility issues, and performance degradation, violating hardware maintenance and physical security guidelines. It also circumvents the established hardware inventory management and procurement processes, which are designed to ensure the integrity and security of the IT infrastructure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulatory requirements. This involves 1. Assessing the immediate impact of the failure on business operations. 2. Consulting and strictly following documented procedures for hardware diagnostics, troubleshooting, and replacement. 3. Ensuring all actions are properly documented, including inventory updates and asset management. 4. Verifying that any replacement hardware meets all security, performance, and compatibility standards. 5. communicating transparently with stakeholders about the situation and the steps being taken. This systematic approach ensures compliance, minimizes risk, and maintains the integrity of the IT environment. Question 15. Investigation of the post-disaster system recovery process for a critical financial services application, where the primary data center experienced a catastrophic failure. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, is faced with multiple potential recovery strategies. Which approach best aligns with regulatory expectations for disaster recovery and business continuity in a highly regulated environment? Assuming the organization has a documented disaster recovery plan, DRP, and business continuity plan, BCP. Option A. Prioritize the restoration of core transactional systems based on the BCP's criticality matrix, followed by comprehensive data integrity checks and system functionality testing before bringing them online, and then proceed with less critical systems in a phased manner. Option B. Immediately restore the most frequently accessed user-facing applications from the latest available backups to provide immediate visibility and perceived service restoration. Option C. Focus on restoring the primary database server first, assuming all other dependent applications will automatically reintegrate once the database is operational. Option D. Restore all systems from the most recent full backups without performing extensive data integrity checks or system recovery testing to expedite the overall recovery timeline. The correct answer is A. Prioritize the restoration of core transactional systems based on the BCP's criticality matrix, followed by comprehensive data integrity checks and system functionality testing before bringing them online, and then proceed with less critical systems in a phased manner. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a systems maintenance administrator, SMA, to balance the immediate need for system restoration with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance following a significant disaster. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise recovery objectives and violate established protocols. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the recovery process is not only fast, but also thorough, secure, and compliant with all applicable regulations. The correct approach involves a phased recovery strategy that prioritizes critical systems based on the Business Continuity Plan, BCP, and Disaster Recovery Plan, DRP, followed by rigorous testing of restored systems and data integrity checks before bringing them fully online. This aligns with the fundamental principles of disaster recovery and business continuity, which mandate a structured, documented, and tested approach to minimize downtime and data loss. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and financial services, depending on the specific jurisdiction for the SMA exam, e.g., UK GDPR, FCA regulations, often require organizations to demonstrate robust BCP/DRP capabilities, including regular testing and validation of recovery procedures. Adhering to the documented DRP ensures that recovery efforts are systematic, traceable, and meet predefined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, thereby fulfilling regulatory obligations and maintaining stakeholder trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on restoring the most visible or frequently used systems without regard for dependencies or data consistency would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to data corruption, loss of critical information, and an inability to meet regulatory requirements for data accuracy and availability. Such an approach fails to adhere to the principles of a well-defined DRP, which outlines the order of restoration based on business criticality and interdependencies. Another incorrect approach, which involves restoring systems from the most recent available backup without verifying its integrity or completeness, poses significant risks. This could result in the restoration of corrupted data or incomplete backups, leading to further operational disruptions and potential data loss. Regulatory compliance often mandates that backups are not only available but also verifiable and restorable, and this approach bypasses essential validation steps. A third incorrect approach, which bypasses system recovery testing and immediately declares systems operational, is also professionally unacceptable. This neglects a critical phase of the recovery process, potentially leaving systems in an unstable or non-functional state. Regulatory bodies often require evidence of successful system recovery testing as part of an organization's BCP/DRP validation, and skipping this step demonstrates a failure to meet these requirements and a disregard for operational stability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the organization's BCP and DRP, clear communication with stakeholders regarding recovery progress and challenges, and a commitment to following the documented procedures. Prioritization should be driven by the BCP's assessment of business criticality, and all recovery steps must be documented and validated. The SMA should act as a guardian of the recovery process, ensuring it is executed in a manner that is both efficient and compliant, rather than succumbing to pressure for expediency at the expense of thoroughness and integrity. Question 16. Governance review demonstrates that the current property management system, PMS, has been in place for several years, and its guest profile and data management modules are being assessed for their ability to meet evolving data privacy regulations. The primary concern is ensuring the secure storage, accurate retrieval, and lawful processing of guest personal information. Which of the following approaches best evaluates the PMS's suitability for ongoing use in relation to guest data management? Option A. Evaluate the PMS's functionalities for secure data storage, granular access controls, audit trails for data modifications, and its ability to facilitate data subject access requests and consent management in line with data protection legislation. Option B. Focus on the PMS's integration capabilities with marketing platforms, assuming that any system supporting sales and marketing efforts inherently manages guest data responsibly. Option C. Assess the PMS's capacity to handle a high volume of guest data and its speed in retrieving historical guest records, assuming that efficient access implies adequate data management. Option D. Prioritize the PMS's user interface intuitiveness and ease of front desk operations, as a user-friendly system is less likely to lead to data entry errors that could compromise data integrity. The correct answer is C. Assess the PMS's capacity to handle a high volume of guest data and its speed in retrieving historical guest records, assuming that efficient access implies adequate data management. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of guest data management and the potential for significant reputational and financial damage if a PMS system's data handling capabilities are compromised. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, must balance operational efficiency with stringent data privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure the chosen approach aligns with the organization's legal obligations and ethical responsibilities towards guest information. The correct approach involves a thorough evaluation of the PMS's guest profile and data management modules against the specific requirements of the relevant data protection legislation. This includes verifying the system's ability to securely store, access, update, and delete guest data, as well as its capacity to handle data subject access requests and consent management. Adherence to these functionalities ensures compliance with data privacy laws, safeguarding guest information and maintaining trust. An incorrect approach that prioritizes only the speed of data retrieval without considering security or consent mechanisms fails to meet regulatory obligations. This could lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, and significant penalties under data protection laws. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on the volume of data the system can store, neglecting its ability to manage data accuracy, retention policies, or deletion requests, also violates data protection principles. This can result in the retention of outdated or inaccurate personal data, increasing the risk of misuse and noncompliance. A further incorrect approach that overlooks the system's audit trail capabilities for data access and modifications is also problematic. Without a robust audit trail, it becomes impossible to track who accessed or altered guest data, hindering investigations into potential breaches and making it difficult to demonstrate compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. The SMA should first identify all applicable regulatory requirements related to data management. Then, they should evaluate the PMS functionalities against these requirements, prioritizing those that directly impact data security, privacy, and guest rights. Documentation of the evaluation process and the system's compliance status is crucial for accountability and future audits. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows that a systems maintenance administrator has discovered a critical security vulnerability during routine system checks that could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. The organization has a documented security policy that mandates reporting all security incidents through a specific incident response portal, and compliance with data privacy regulations requires timely notification of breaches. The administrator has the technical expertise to patch the vulnerability immediately. What is the most appropriate course of action for the system's maintenance administrator? Option A. Report the vulnerability through the designated incident response portal and await further instructions from the security team before taking any action. Option B. Attempt to fix the vulnerability independently without reporting it to avoid unnecessary alarm. Option C. Immediately patch the vulnerability and then report the incident through the designated portal. Option D. Disclose the vulnerability to a trusted external cybersecurity researcher for advice before reporting it internally. The correct answer is C. Immediately patch the vulnerability and then report the incident through the designated portal. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate need to address a critical security vulnerability and the established procedures for reporting and remediation. A systems maintenance administrator, SMA, is entrusted with maintaining the integrity and security of systems, which includes identifying and mitigating risks. The pressure to act quickly to prevent potential data breaches or system compromise is significant. However, adherence to established security policies and compliance frameworks is paramount to ensure that remediation efforts are documented, authorized, and do not inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or violate regulatory requirements. This requires a careful balance between proactive action and procedural integrity. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the discovered critical vulnerability through the established incident response channels, as per the organization's security policy and relevant data privacy regulations. This ensures that the incident is formally logged, assessed by the appropriate security team, and that remediation efforts are coordinated and authorized. This aligns with the principles of security monitoring and incident response planning, which mandate timely and documented reporting of security events. Compliance with industry standards and data privacy regulations, such as those governing data protection, often requires a structured approach to vulnerability management and incident handling to demonstrate due diligence and protect sensitive information. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to fix the vulnerability independently without reporting it. This bypasses the established security policy and incident response plan, which are designed to ensure that all security events are managed systematically. This failure to report could lead to a lack of proper documentation, unauthorized changes to the system, and a missed opportunity for the security team to assess the broader impact of the vulnerability. It also violates the principle of accountability within the security framework. Furthermore, depending on the nature of the data involved, this could lead to non-compliance with data privacy regulations, as the organization may not be able to demonstrate timely detection and remediation of a security incident, potentially resulting in fines or reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to delay reporting the vulnerability until after a scheduled maintenance window, even if the vulnerability is critical. While scheduled maintenance is important for system stability, critical vulnerabilities often require immediate attention to prevent exploitation. Prioritizing routine maintenance over a critical security threat demonstrates a failure in risk assessment and incident response prioritization, potentially exposing the organization to significant harm. This approach neglects the proactive security monitoring and the urgency required by incident response planning. A third incorrect approach would be to disclose the vulnerability externally to a third party before reporting it internally and following the established incident response procedures. This is a severe breach of security policy and potentially illegal, as it could alert malicious actors to the vulnerability or violate confidentiality agreements. It undermines the organization's ability to manage the incident effectively and protect its data, leading to significant regulatory and legal repercussions. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's security policies, incident response plans, and relevant regulatory requirements. When a critical vulnerability is discovered, the immediate priority is to follow the established reporting procedures. This ensures that the incident is handled in a controlled, documented, and compliant manner. If the established procedures seem inadequate for a critical, time-sensitive issue, the professional should escalate the concern through appropriate channels rather than circumventing them. This demonstrates both technical competence and ethical responsibility. Question 18. When evaluating a critical system upgrade that requires immediate vendor engagement due to an impending service outage, and the preferred vendor is known to be capable but has not undergone the full, documented vendor selection process, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the system's maintenance administrator? Option A. Halt the upgrade until the full vendor selection process is completed, even if it means extended downtime, to ensure strict adherence to all established protocols. Option B. Immediately engage the preferred vendor for the upgrade, bypassing the formal selection and contract negotiation process due to the critical nature of the outage, and address documentation later. Option C. Engage a new, pre-approved vendor from the existing list who has completed the full selection process, even if they are less familiar with the specific system, to avoid compromising the integrity of the vendor management framework. Option D. Proceed with the upgrade using the preferred vendor, documenting the urgency and the vendor's known capabilities, and initiating the full vendor selection and contract negotiation process retrospectively. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the upgrade using the preferred vendor, documenting the urgency and the vendor's known capabilities, and initiating the full vendor selection and contract negotiation process retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it forces the system's maintenance administrator, SMA, to balance the immediate need for a critical system upgrade with the long-term implications of compromising vendor selection and contract negotiation processes. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to overlooking due diligence, which has significant ethical and regulatory ramifications. A robust vendor management framework, as mandated by regulatory bodies overseeing IT systems and data security, emphasizes a structured and documented approach to vendor engagement. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established vendor selection criteria and contract negotiation protocols, even under pressure. This upholds the principles of good governance, risk management, and compliance. Specifically, regulatory frameworks often require documented evidence of vendor due diligence, including financial stability, security certifications, and technical capabilities, to mitigate risks associated with third-party service providers. Negotiating clear service level agreements, SLAs, that define performance metrics, uptime guarantees, and remediation procedures is also a regulatory imperative to ensure service continuity and accountability. By insisting on following these established procedures, the SMA demonstrates professional integrity and adherence to compliance requirements, protecting the organization from potential breaches, service disruptions, and associated penalties. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the formal vendor selection process and directly engage the preferred vendor without proper vetting. This failure to conduct due diligence violates regulatory requirements that mandate risk assessment of third-party providers, potentially exposing the organization to security vulnerabilities or operational risks if the vendor is not adequately capable or compliant. Another incorrect approach is to agree to a contract without clearly defined SLAs. This lack of specificity creates ambiguity regarding service expectations and recourse in case of underperformance, which contravenes regulatory guidelines that emphasize clear contractual terms for critical IT services. Proceeding with a vendor without a formal contract or with loosely defined terms exposes the organization to significant legal and operational risks and demonstrates a disregard for established governance and compliance standards. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulatory requirements. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and its potential impact. 2. Consulting relevant internal policies and external regulations. 3. Evaluating proposed actions against these standards. 4. Communicating risks and recommendations clearly to stakeholders, emphasizing the importance of compliance and long-term stability over short-term expediency. In situations of urgency, the focus should be on finding compliant solutions, which might involve expedited but still documented processes, rather than outright circumvention. Question 19. Compliance review shows that the installation of the new property management system, PMS, software is nearing completion. The system's maintenance administrator, SMA, is responsible for the final configuration and user setup. To expedite the process, the SMA is considering several approaches for the remaining tasks, which approach best aligns with regulatory requirements and best practices for system integrity and security. Option A. Rely on the vendor's default user account settings, activate all modules without assessing their immediate necessity, and defer detailed security configuration until after the system is live and initial user feedback is received. Option B. Skip detailed verification of system configuration settings, assuming defaults are secure, and proceed with a quick data import without extensive validation, focusing primarily on getting the system operational. Option C. Proceed with a standard, vendor-recommended database setup and configuration. Meticulously verify all system settings against the approved security policy, activate only the modules essential for current operations, and conduct a phased data migration with thorough validation of imported data. Option D. Utilize a generic database configuration that has been used for other applications. Grant administrative access to all users to simplify future management, and activate all available PMS modules to ensure future flexibility. The correct answer is C. Proceed with a standard, vendor-recommended database setup and configuration. Meticulously verify all system settings against the approved security policy, activate only the modules essential for current operations, and conduct a phased data migration with thorough validation of imported data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for systems maintenance administrators, SMA, in ensuring that critical property management system, PMS, software installation adheres to established procedures and regulatory requirements. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient system deployment with the imperative of maintaining data integrity, security, and compliance, especially when dealing with sensitive resident and financial data. The SMA must navigate potential shortcuts or deviations from standard operating procedures that could lead to significant operational, security, or compliance risks. The correct approach involves a meticulous and documented process of software installation, database configuration, and user account management, strictly adhering to the vendor's guidelines and internal security policies. This ensures that the PMS is set up correctly from the outset, minimizing the risk of future errors, data breaches, or non-compliance. Specifically, verifying database integrity, implementing robust user access controls based on the principle of least privilege, and confirming all system configuration settings align with operational and security mandates are crucial steps. Activating only necessary modules and planning for data migration with thorough validation are also key to a successful and compliant deployment. This approach directly addresses the regulatory framework's emphasis on data protection, system integrity, and operational efficiency. An incorrect approach that bypasses vendor-recommended database setup and instead relies on a generic, unverified configuration poses a significant risk. This could lead to data corruption, performance issues, or security vulnerabilities that are difficult to trace and rectify, potentially violating data integrity regulations. Another incorrect approach that involves granting broad administrative privileges to all users without proper justification or review is a direct contravention of security best practices and data privacy laws, increasing the likelihood of unauthorized access or accidental data modification. Furthermore, failing to document the interface customization or module activation/deactivation processes, or performing data migration without comprehensive validation, introduces opacity and increases the risk of errors and non-compliance, making audits difficult and potentially exposing the organization to regulatory penalties. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to documented procedures, vendor best practices, and regulatory mandates. This involves a thorough understanding of the PMS software's requirements, the organization's security policies, and relevant data protection laws. Before any installation or configuration, a review of the project scope, potential risks, and required approvals should be conducted. During the process, meticulous documentation, regular verification of steps against established checklists, and clear communication with stakeholders are essential. Post-installation, comprehensive testing and validation are critical to ensure the system functions as intended and remains compliant. Question 20. Analysis of a critical database server failure where the primary data files are found to be corrupted. The organization's Disaster Recovery and Business Continuity Plan, DR/BCP, outlines a multi-tiered backup strategy including full backups and transaction logs. The SMA has access to the most recent full backup and a series of transaction logs taken since that full backup. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to restore the database to a consistent and operational state, adhering to the DR/BCP? Option A. Attempt to repair the corrupted live data files directly using database recovery tools without utilizing any backups or transaction logs. Option B. Restore the most recent full backup, assuming it is uncorrupted, and immediately bring the database online without applying transaction logs. Option C. Restore the most recent full backup and then apply all subsequent transaction logs to bring the database to its most recent consistent state. Option D. Initiate a complete rebuild of the database server from scratch and re-import data from application-level exports, bypassing the backup system. The correct answer is C. Restore the most recent full backup and then apply all subsequent transaction logs to bring the database to its most recent consistent state. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for systems maintenance administrators, SMA, involving a critical system failure. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of restoring service with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to established disaster recovery protocols. A hasty, unverified restoration could lead to further data corruption or security vulnerabilities, while an overly cautious approach might prolong downtime and impact business operations. The SMA must make a rapid, informed decision under pressure, considering the potential consequences of each action. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented process that prioritizes data integrity and adherence to the established disaster recovery (DR) and business continuity plan (BCP). This approach is correct because it aligns with regulatory requirements for data protection and operational resilience, which mandate that organizations have robust plans in place to mitigate the impact of system failures and ensure data can be recovered accurately. Specifically, it follows the principle of restoring from the most recent, verified, and uncorrupted backup, followed by applying transaction logs to bring the database to a consistent state. This minimizes data loss and ensures the integrity of the restored data, a fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation for SMAs. Incorrect approach is analysis. Restoring from an older, unverified backup without attempting to apply transaction logs is an incorrect approach. This would likely result in significant data loss, failing to meet regulatory requirements for data retention and accuracy. It also bypasses established procedures designed to ensure data consistency. Immediately initiating a full system rebuild without attempting a backup restoration is also incorrect. While it might seem like a quick fix, it ignores the possibility of a successful data recovery from backups, which is a core component of DR/BCP. This approach risks unnecessary downtime and data loss if a viable backup existed. Furthermore, it fails to follow the documented DR/BCP, which is a regulatory and ethical failing. Attempting to restore the database directly from the corrupted live data without using backups or logs is fundamentally flawed and incorrect. This action would almost certainly perpetuate or exacerbate data corruption, violating data integrity principles and regulatory mandates for accurate record keeping. It demonstrates a severe lack of understanding of fundamental database recovery procedures. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope and nature of the failure. This involves consulting the incident response plan and the DR/BCP. The next step is to assess available recovery options, prioritizing those that maintain data integrity and minimize data loss, such as using verified backups and transaction logs. Documentation of all actions taken is crucial for audit trails and post-incident analysis. If the primary recovery methods fail, then escalating to more drastic measures like a full rebuild, while still adhering to documented procedures, becomes the next logical step. The overarching principle is to act in accordance with established policies and regulatory requirements, ensuring the security and integrity of the systems and data under their care.